Good morning to all the dignitaries, invited guests, professors, and dear students. With great joy and ecstasy, I, Dr. Pooja Sharma, feel privileged to extend my warm welcome on the occasion of our annual talk, Shatranj 2024. Gujarat Law Society has been in the field of education for over a period of 9 decades and is considered as one of the largest and most renowned destinations for education in the state of Gujarat. Its foundation was laid down by the Iron Man of India, Sri Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Sri Ganesh Mavlankar, the first Speaker of Lok Sabha, Shet Sri Kasturbhai Lalbhai, late Sri I.M. Nanavati, the legal luminary, expanded the institution. Under the able leadership of Sri Sudhir Bhai Nanavati, GLS established a statutory state-private university by an act of Gujarat State Assembly in 2015. GLS University is set up with the vision to benchmark global standard of education and create path-breaking programs in the areas of strategic importance, not only to the country, but also across the world. Faculty of Business Administration was established in 1997 with the intention to equip students with a bedrock of management skills to help them navigate through the complex business environment. So let's have an overview of our university.
GLS University is a place that embraces transformation. Discover a world of possibilities where you can embrace different roles and unlock your full potential as an entrepreneur, an engineer, a lawyer, a designer, an artist, and a researcher. New Dimensions welcomes variety, allowing you to have the freedom to select your preferred faculty and subject. Start your journey to your desired career and a solid future. Choose a prestigious institution in India that is highly regarded among students. GLS University values learning and personal growth. We encourage achievement with a long tradition of academic excellence and research. GLS University excels in education, innovation, and quality. GLS University has become the epicenter of knowledge by delivering high-quality higher education. Founded in 1927, the Gujarat Law Society has played a crucial role in influencing the educational environment in Gujarat. Today, it serves as a tribute to 100 years of dedication to knowledge, progress, and empowerment. The founders of GLS were Sri Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, a highly influential figure known as the Iron Man of India. Sri Ganesh Mavlankar, the first Speaker of Independent India, and Sri Kasturbhai Lalbhai, a prominent industrialist. Sri I.M. Nanavati, a highly respected philanthropist, led the trust for one of Gujarat's most renowned and long-standing educational institutions. Student-focused amenities underpin GLS University's secure, welcoming campus. The campus strikes the right mix between heritage and contemporary, inspiring students to learn and flourish. Almost 100 years on, Sri Sudhir Nanavati, the president of GLS University, is the driving force behind the dynamic leadership that GLS experiences today. Under his direction, a single legal college became a consortium of self-financed institutions and then a major university with 15,000 students to provide outstanding education. Mr. Devang Nanavati, Vice President of GLS University, who shares GLS's motto, Learn, Love and Serve, motivates students and advocates for faculty and staff empowerment. Their dedication produces a dynamic synergy that shapes not only an academic institution, but a community ready to meet the biggest challenges. Dr. Chandni Kapadia, Executive Director of GLS University, shares the goal for education revolution. The university has improved its skills to meet international educational standards under her guidance. She has played a significant role in bringing forth several groundbreaking ideas. GLS University is designed to foster a sense of curiosity and provide enriching experiences throughout your educational journey.
GLS University is devoted to cultivating an environment that promotes personal growth and academic excellence, empowering students to surpass their expectations. With innovative teaching methods and a commitment to holistic development, the university strives to foster a dynamic learning experience.
I'm proud to be a part of an institution with an illustrious education history of nearly 100 years, where traditions are passed through generations.
This enduring legacy has not only helped me academically, but also has helped me for the pursuit of knowledge and to be more confident in life.
One of the things I find most appealing about GLS University is its incredible range of diversity. It's amazing to see how diverse the student population is in this cross-cultural community.
The wide array of books and digital equipment available have truly helped me with my research process.
I am thrilled to be a part of my dream company and have the opportunity to make a significant impact in the corporate world.
GLS University's flagship programs, the Faculty of Management and the Faculty of Business Administration, have emerged as premier management schools in India. The focus is to prepare students for life and transform them into leaders of tomorrow with outstanding placements. GLS University's Faculty of Law is one of the nation's top law schools, training tomorrow's attorneys. Unique teaching methods include case study discussions, interactive presentations, expert sessions, seminars, conferences, and the practical application of case law techniques. The GLS Institute of Design is a fast-growing Indian institution. Students are prepared for fashion, communication, product design, and interior design using this strategy. The objective is to elevate Indian design aesthetics to a global standard by seamlessly integrating technology, digital design, and practical manual design. GLS University's Faculty of Commerce is renowned for its vibrant culture and seeks to discover and develop student skills. Many important awards have acknowledged the program as a premier institute. The Faculty of Performing Arts at GLS University allows students to concentrate on the fascinating disciplines of dance, music, drama, and fashion, combining the creative ingenuity of performing arts with a complicated realm of economics. GLS University's Faculty of Engineering and Technology and Faculty of Computer Applications and Information Technology cater to young people's intellectual curiosity to help them solve real-world engineering challenges. The focus is on developing computational solutions using cutting-edge scientific methodologies. GLS University's School of Doctoral Research and Innovation emphasizes research to develop the nation's intellectual capacity and critical thinkers. In recognition of the global village, GLS University has partnered with over 60 universities worldwide, including UTS College, Sydney, Australia, Leeds Beckett University and ISDC, UK, NABA, Louis Business School, Italy, Seneca Polytechnic, Canada, California Baptist University, Harvard Business School, New Jersey City University, USA, Curtin University, Australia and Dubai, and Synergy University. These collaborations allow GLS to organize worldwide immersion programs that give students brief-term immersion experiences while learning academic, commercial, and cultural skills in other countries. With state-of-the-art facilities, vibrant open-air amphitheatre provides students with the perfect environment to express their creativity. Classrooms promote knowledge. FitWave Gym stresses fitness, and Foodiesta and Shivam Canteen fosters lasting connections.
GLS University is a storied and reputable institution that helps you glide your ideas to tomorrow's reality. So, your classes and learnings today will turn into your careers tomorrow.
For all of us at GLS University, Excellence in education is now a way of life. It has been so for around 100 years and is still thriving. Our true reward is the laurels that our students have earned, our faculty and their qualifications, our academics and their excellence. This is our pride, our dignity, our honor. The founding fathers of the Gujarat Law Society had sown the seeds for an enlightened future around a century ago. As GLS University blossoms into a tree, we resolve to build our society, foster the future of the nation, and make a remarkable difference to the quality of human life at large. We are GLS University.
Grateful to be a part of such a progressive institution. We are holding Shatranj for the 7th time with this year's theme, Long India, the Geopolitics and Geoeconomics of Bharat's Rise. It's an honor and privilege to have Shri Harsh Gupta Madhusudan in person among us. Shatranj, the ancient precursor to modern chess, holds significant strategic importance across various dimensions. This fosters strategic thinking and enhances decision-making skills, which are valuable in both personal and professional context. The name of this talk itself suggests that how various national and international events leave an indelible print on our national character, pride, and integrity. Throughout history, India has held a pivotal position, fostering relationships with nations far and wide, rooted in principle of mutual respect, cooperation, and shared prosperity. From our strategic partnerships to our cultural exchanges, each interaction has contributed to a tapestry of international engagements that define India's diplomatic landscape. Today, we have gathered to delve into a compelling narrative that resonates deeply with the fabric of our times, Long India, the Geopolitics and Geoeconomics of Bharat's Rise. This theme encapsulates not just a moment in history, but a profound journey of a nation that spans millennia and continues to unfold the breathtaking promise and potential. Bharat, as it has been known since antiquity, stands at a critical juncture in its evolution. From the ancient civilizations of Indus Valley to the intellectual ferment of Nalanda, from the spiritual enlightenment of the Upanishads to the political dynamism of modern democracy, India's trajectory has been marked by resilience, diversity, and the unwavering spirit of innovation. Today, as we reflect on Long India, we have to consider both the geopolitics and geoeconomics that shape Bharat's ascent on global stage. Geopolitically, India's strategic location at the crossroads of Asia provides it with a unique vantage point, a bridge between East and West, a hub of maritime routes, and a linchpin in the evolving dynamics of regional and global security. Geoeconomically, India's transformation into one of the world's fastest growing major economies is nothing short of remarkable. With a burgeoning middle class, a youthful demographic dividend, and a fast developing ecosystem of innovation and entrepreneurship, India is poised to play an increasingly pivotal role in shaping the global economic environment. The journey of Long India is not without its challenges. As we navigate the complexities of rapidly changing world, India confronts issues ranging from sustainable development and environmental stewardship to the quest of inclusive growth and social juncture. It is precisely in addressing these challenges that India's true strength and resilience shine through. The story of Long India is not just a narrative of past or the present. It is a beacon of hope for the future. As we look ahead, let us draw inspiration from India's ancient wisdom and its modern dynamism. So let the journey begin. To make this event blessed one, invoke Goddess Saraswati by kindling the lamp of knowledge and wisdom. For seeking the choicest blessings for the same, I invite our admirable Dean and our valued guest for the parampara of Deep Prajwalan.
दबाइए।
या कुन्देन्दु तुषारहार धवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना।
A good leader inspires people to have confidence in the leader. A great leader inspires people to have confidence in themselves. With this sentiment in mind, it's my privilege to invite a leader who exemplifies these qualities, who holds the department together, inspire us to give our best, and optimistic, compassionate, kind-hearted, and a versatile, the one and only, our very own Dr. Shefali Dani, Dean, Faculty of Business Administration, to give her welcome address.
Thank you, Pooja ma'am. Good morning, all of you. This rainy season, after such a long time, today monsoon, yesterday, yes, monsoon has started. And we are thankful that at least today during our function, before that it was there. It was Ami Chantrana. So whenever we start new activity, new event, Varsad nu avu, that is a good sign. So thank God first of all that we are starting our event with such a good thing. Good morning to all the students, my colleagues, and especially our today's guest, Dr. Harsh Gupta Madhusudan. With great pleasure, I welcome all of you to highly anticipated guest session on the topic Long India, the geopolitics and geoeconomics of Bharat's rise. In an era where the global landscape is rapidly evolving, understanding the intricacies of geopolitical and geoeconomic shift is paramount. India, or Bharat, as it is traditionally known, stands at a pivotal juncture in its history, and its rise is a subject of immense interest and significance. Today, we have the honor of delving into this fantastic topic with the guidance of our esteemed guest, Mr. Harsh Gupta Madhusudan, who is an India-based public market investor. He has written extensively on economics, finance, and politics for Mint, Swarajya, the Wall Street Journal, the Indian Express, and other publications. Harsh Gupta, he graduated from Dartmouth College with graduate degree in economics. Sir also holds the MBA degree, whose profound insight and extensive expertise in the field promises to enlighten and engage us. India's journey on the global stage is not just a story of economic growth, but also of strategic depth, cultural richness, and commitment to global peace and cooperation. As we explore the dynamics of India's rise, we will gain a deeper understanding of how this ancient civilization is shaping the future of geopolitics and geoeconomics. Our discussion today will encompass a broad spectrum of themes, including India's strategic relationships, its economic policies, the role of technology and innovation, and the cultural factors that contribute to its global influence. I encourage each of you to actively participate. Please ask questions and share your perspectives. This session is not only an opportunity to learn, but also to engage in meaningful dialogue that can broaden our understanding and appreciation of India's role in the world today. Once again, I extend warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here and for your enthusiastic support. Students, thank you so much, and special thanks from the management of GLS, Sudhir Nanavati sir and Chandni ma'am. Thank you Harsh sir for coming and sparing your valuable time. Sir is so busy. Pooja ma'am is constantly in touch with sir. She used to call sir, she used to message her, sir. Yesterday also in the night, I'll tell you at 9 o'clock, Tejal ma'am called sir and sir was busy with the meeting. So this is what you people should learn from this type of scholars, that your time is very important. Please spare your time and please learn something from this type of gaze. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Want to meet someone extraordinary? Allow me to introduce Mr. Harsh Gupta Madhusudan. Shri Harsh Gupta Madhusudan is an investor, author, and economist. He is a founding employee of Angel One Wealth, an author of 2 books, and the winner of the 2022 Dr. B.R. Shenoy Economics Award. He was earlier director on board of NSE Gift City and also a consultant with Bain in US, UK. He is Dartmouth and INSEAD graduate, an IIT Delhi dropout, and a CFA charter holder. He has written extensively on economics, finance, and politics for Mint, Swarajya, the Wall Street Journal, the Indian Express, and other leading publications. And his last co-authored book, A New Idea of India, was endorsed by the Prime Minister of India. He is a highly creative thinker and knowledgeable analyst with exceptional quantitative skills. He has a first-rate understanding of financial derivatives. Mr. Harsh is not afraid of taking contrarian positions. We can always expect him to stand up for the issues which he believes in against all odds. From a political, economical point of view, he is true libertarian, and his articles are always a welcome read. He is a voracious reader, and his crystal clear thought process makes him a brilliant strategic advisor. Sir always excelled in academics, sports, international affairs, and other co-curricular activities. He has been contributing to the society and social causes with brilliant initiatives. With profound respect, we request our Dean, Dr. Shefali Dani, to present a token of highest regard to our guest Harsh sir for adorning this occasion with grace and honor by following the tradition of Atiti Devo Bhava. When the fire of innovation shapes the gold of economics, we find luminaries like him. Let's roll out the red carpet for the maestro of economic symphonies, the visionary Shri Harsh Gupta Madhusudan. Sir, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shefali, the Dean of the Business Administration School. Thank you so much to Dr. Tejal and Dr. Patel who came to pick me up at the airport. Thank you, ma'am, for the introduction. Thank you, Dr. Pooja, ma'am. I've not met her yet, but, oh, you're Pooja, ma'am. Okay, thank you. Sorry. So we've spoken multiple times on the phone, but I just did not know your face, so thank you so much. Thank you to GLS University. It is indeed a great honor and privilege for me. I was obviously reading up about GLS before coming here, and I just got to know that it's almost a 100-year-old institution. It was started in 1927, pre-independence. And in 3 years, we will have finished our centenary. And I'm hearing that we'll have 2 or 3 new buildings by then. And genuinely, it's a great academic institution, one of the first law schools in Gujarat, I've been told. My wife is a lawyer, so she went to Indian Law Society in Pune, ILS, and I'm very, very happy to be here at GLS. And I'm sure she must have come here for one of those moot court debates, etc. The topic today is very interesting and also very serious. And I want, as the title says, for you to know my bias. I am extremely bullish on India right now. And I'll come, obviously, the point here is not to just say that, the point here is try to convince you about that. Not just from a long-term perspective, which is obviously there and we'll discuss that, but even from a short to medium-term perspective. One way to say that is I am biased. The other way to say that is I have skin in the game. Many of you might have heard that phrase, skin in the game. I was working abroad, I always wanted to come back to India, because I really believe, over and above my emotional reasons to come back, my family, my country, I truly believe this is the opportunity of the century. And in some ways, people who are of your age are the luckiest people if you can use and leverage this opportunity. Because the playground in front of you over the coming decades and generations has not been before any other cohort before in Indian history. Now, why that is the case? Around 2000 years ago, 1500 years ago, India had 1/3 of the world's economy. So Angus Madison is an economist, historian, and he estimates, of course, that included undivided India, what is today Pakistan and Bangladesh is included. Even if you adjust a bit for that, what is today India had around 30% of the world's economy. Do you know that in the 1990s, so that's only 30 years ago, at one point, our GDP as a percentage of the world's GDP came down to almost 1%. So imagine going from 1/3 of the world's economy to 1/100th of the world economy. By the way, we are right now again back to 3 to 4%. Big jump, nowhere close to where we were, nonetheless a big jump. So the question to ask and understand, obviously, is this bounce back from 1% to 3% what economists and investors call a dead cat bounce? Basically, something fell very rapidly, and it just because it fell, it bounced back a bit from the ground, and then it falls again. Is that a expand it a bit more? Do you want to invest more? If you're being a designer, a computer scientist, and if you get a great job outside, I'm always in favor of going outside to study and work. But on the margin, do you want to come back? Do you want to invest in the Indian economy? Do you want to convince your parents to invest in the Indian economy? These questions all actually depend, if we take a slightly longer view than 2 or 3 years, on whether this India story is real. And therefore, all our lives, whether we like it or not, is intricately connected to this. Now, just to give you a sense, I gave you an idea that India went from 33% to 1%, and right now we are back to perhaps 3-4%. And of course, there are all kinds of nuances. You have to adjust for cost of living or not, and all that is there. Do you know the American economy today, depending how you calculate it, is between 15 to 25% of the world economy. And it has only 4% of the people in the world. India has 17% of the world's people, and we have around 3 to 4%. So almost the exact opposite. Their percentage of GDP is our percentage of population. Their percentage of population is our percentage of GDP. Now, again, the flip side of this question is, will such, by the way, America at one point in the 1950s after Second World War was almost half of the world economy. Just like in the 1850s, the British were around half of the world's industrial production. So we've had even more extreme dominance by countries much smaller in population than India or China. The question is, are we going to see what economists call more divergence, primarily between West and Asia? Or are we in the early phases of what people call the Great Convergence? That's another way of framing in a more global sense what I mentioned about India. So let's first try to understand how economic growth happens. Economic growth happens, what do you think is the biggest export of the United States of America? I'll have an interactive session. I want to keep the speech to a minimum time so that we have more time for questions. But nonetheless, still, if anybody knows what is the biggest export of the US? Yes, just say it out loud. Okay, that's one export. He said weapons. Anybody else? Okay, sure, culture, media. One final guess? Yes, just say it loud. Yes, all three are right answers, but the biggest export of the United States is the dollar. They run a trade deficit of hundreds of billions of dollars, and they can run it, it seems almost infinitely, because everybody wants to buy their assets, their currency, their bonds, their stocks. For that reason, whether we like it or not, whether it is a real good or service or not, the point is they can buy stuff from the rest of the world the way we cannot, because they have the world's reserve currency. What is America's biggest import? Guess? I think you said wheat or food. What else? Okay, what else? I think that's the right answer. The biggest import of America is people. So it is very interesting to understand why is it people. So basically, America as a system is at such an extremely sophisticated technological capitalist level. They keep on getting the world's smartest people, or at least some of the world's smartest people. Those people do more innovation, productivity, creativity there. They pay more taxes. With that taxes, they build more cities, more infrastructure, they spend more on defense, they dominate the world more, which in turn makes their dollar and their currency more attractive, which they can export more to the rest of the world. It's what we can call a virtuous cycle. The single biggest reason why America was able to do that, and which was the power which was dominant before America, which is dominating the world? Before the US. Not USSR and US had a Cold War. Britain, United Kingdom, which was unfortunately our colonizer till 1947. The reason the US could take over the UK, it comes down to one thing: scale. So today, for example, UK has a population of 65 million, and US has a population of 340 million. So roughly, give or take 5 times. Interestingly, India and China's population of the US multiplied is around 4 times. Now, what does scale mean? For example, the British were very good at textile and cotton clothes manufacturing in Manchester. How they got it by actually killing the Indian industry is another story, I'll come to that. But Manchester was the textile capital of the world. But when new industries were coming up, like chemicals and automobiles, By then, the American scale and population and land size was so much larger than the UK. And to some extent, Germany had unified by then in the 1870s. So that the rise of these new countries made it much simpler for them to dominate these new industries. So for example, even though the car was technically invented in Germany by actually a gentleman called Benz, from which Mercedes-Benz the name comes, the first mass-scale manufacturer of cars was Ford, Henry Ford. Of course, Henry Ford was very smart, he did many things correctly, but the biggest reason was he had a much larger market to serve. And therefore, he did some building cars like one person would spend a lot of time building a car, one person would only build one part, the next person would build only the tire, the third person would only install the engine. The work became much more boring, but the speed increased dramatically, and therefore the cost fell. And anyway, the market was large. Today, as we speak right now, in electric vehicles, China is the world's number one. Now, a huge part of that, it's a new industry. See, it's difficult to overtake in an existing industry. America did not overtake UK in cotton textiles first. It is easier when new technology comes in that the country which is prepared and has more scale and more innovation, it takes over. China today has already overtaken the US in electric vehicles. To the extent that the Americans who used to give us lectures me as a libertarian, that is slightly outdated news. I am no longer a libertarian because my first loyalty is to the Indian nation state. So whatever works for the Indian economy, that is my loyalty. So I am no longer for full free trade given the rise of China, the way it has risen. And those who used to give us lectures about free trade, what has America done? Has anybody seen the headline? They put 100% tariffs on electric vehicles from China. 100% tariffs. America did not have any tariffs earlier on vehicles. You are the dinner. If you are not one of the people who's deciding the rules, then the rules are being decided about you. And we saw that very well in the Russia-Ukraine crisis and how India managed to import crude oil, despite so much pressure on the Prime Minister and Foreign Minister not to do so. So coming back to what China has been able to do, China has been able to do something because of its scale. Now, it's just very simple let's get back to the concept of it. Adam Smith called it the specialization of the market is determined by the scale of the market. Let me give you a simple example. Before Pakka roads were made in Indian villages, most Indian villagers used to sew their own clothes. In fact, you might remember your nanis and dadis in their houses making their own papads, making some of their own food. Gradually, as our society became more commercialized, those things started to happen less and less. So what happened when Pakka roads came up in Indian villages? It became economically viable for one person in one village to build clothes and sell in 20 villages. Earlier, it was not possible for him or her to actually travel across villages and sell it because the roads were so terrible or they were non-existent. So you went from a self-contained economy to a larger scale economy, and therefore one person focused on making clothes, one person focused on making only shoes, one person focused on something else, a lot of things which earlier used to happen within one family. So what happened? Everybody's productivity improved. If you are making who only focuses on shoes. So that thing, when you do it on a larger country or global scale, that gives you economies of scale. So a country like UK was basically outcompeted by the US because of its larger population and larger economy, which in turn made the American economy larger. And we are in the early stages of seeing the Chinese doing that to the Americans. Now, where does that leave India? the Cold War between the Americans and the Soviet Union. Till the 1959, the Russians and Chinese are on the same side. And in 1959, something called the Soviet-Sino split happened. Basically, Stalin died in Russia, and Mao said, whoever the next guy is, Khrushchev was the next guy, I am not going to be your junior. That, multiple reasons, but that was one of the main reasons. It came down to personalities and egos. And when the split happened, it took another 10 years, but slowly China went was then in charge. So when what America did was, because America and Russia were fighting, China told America, why don't you make me more powerful? Why don't you do foreign investment in my country? I will become richer and I will become a hedge against Soviet Union, which was basically a larger version of Russia. What is happening today? It is not like the Americans love Indians. Americans have many problems with Indians. Just right now, a very biased report on religious freedom came out by the United States State Department, which of course is complete propaganda, and we kind of denounced it. Nonetheless, America, because it is already being overtaken by China in sector after sector, it's in the early phase of being overtaken, despite not liking the guts of Prime Minister Modi or Foreign Minister Jai Shankar or Finance Minister Sitaraman, just not liking India in a visceral sense, it has to make India stronger. Because if India is stronger, then China has to look on its southern border also, and China is that much less likely to attack Taiwan or take over South China Sea or attack American treaty allies like Japan and South Korea. India is a friend of America. India is not a treaty ally. Because unlike Japan and South Korea, we have our own nuclear weapons. We do not depend on anybody else for our own national integrity and sovereignty. All friends are welcome, all help is welcome, but if it comes down to it, we are ready to fight alone. That gives us leverage, which a Japan or a South Korea or an Australia or even Europeans don't have today. So because of that reason, what is happening? Apple has already started to transfer its production from China to India. Samsung had already done that. The largest mobile phone plant till recently at least was in Noida for Samsung. In industry after industry, we are now doing that. We are using tariffs, we are using PLIs, production-linked incentives, basically industrial subsidies. We've cut corporate tariffs. We are building infrastructure. We are basically saying if you want to sell in India, then you have to manufacture in India. You don't have to be Indian. We are not protectionist in the sense only Indian companies will do well. But if you want to sell in India to Indians, then you have to create at least some Indian jobs and Indian value add. See, at a per capita level, we are only at $2,500. America is at $85,000, 30 times larger. We are not much richer than Bangladesh. But Bangladesh is with a population almost 10 times smaller than India. If Bangladesh tells this to American companies or Korean companies that if you want to sell to Bangladeshis, you must manufacture near Dhaka, many companies might say, okay, never mind. Some might agree, but many might say, never mind. I mean, Bangladesh is also a large country, but not anywhere close as large as India or China. If a Nepal says, then nobody will even think twice before saying no. It's even smaller population. So despite this is something that has changed under the Prime Minister Modi. For after 1991, we confused reforms, internal reforms, with external free trade. Internal reforms are very important. What is the GST? The GST is a free trade between Indian states. The truck will not stop at the border between Maharashtra and Gujarat. There is an e-challan, e-invoice, and there will be input tax credit. All of you, honestly, somebody from here should be giving a lecture to me. I'm in the state of Gujarat. I should be getting lessons in business, but nonetheless, I'm very honored to speak here. So GST reform was a free trade between Indian states. Infrastructure was making Indian companies more productive. Corporate tax cut was making Indian exports more productive. But what need not have happened was to open the Indian market without asking for some return. That has changed in the last 5 to 10 years. That is where the geoeconomics has come in. Earlier, more out of ideology, more out of like a good student without understanding the reason, just parroting whatever the teacher has said, we said free trade is good. Free trade is good in a certain context. If the other country is throwing subsidies and is attacking you on the Himalayas, then if you open the complete industry to them when they have 10 times larger manufacturing as of now, you will be killed. Do you really want to import steel from China while they're attacking you on the Himalayas? Do we really want TikTok to be available in India when all our data will go to Beijing? So free trade is always free in a geopolitical context. The state is the supreme unit of communication, cooperation, and competition in the modern global economy. Now, what does this scale mean? I'm constantly saying India and China are roughly the same size, but that is not true. Economically, China is ahead of us, but in terms of the young population, India is much ahead of China. What is the biggest cohort? Biggest cohort means which age group or which age year has the largest number of Indians? Take a guess. That is the single biggest cohort in Indian population. What is the largest cohort for the Chinese? What did you say? That's very good answer. That's around 52, 53. So the Chinese biggest cohort is exactly 30 years older than Indians. The Chinese effectively are getting older before they get richer. Another way to put this, in the 1970s, the number of old people and children, so above 65 and children and students below the age of 25, divided by the number of working age population, 25 to 65, that is known as dependency ratio in economics. It's a technical term, you don't have to understand the term, but the point is how many old people and students are there compared to working age population. That is dependency ratio. Generally, higher the dependency ratio, the slower the economic growth, because it's common sense, you have to take care of the children, you have to take care of the older people. Either directly or indirectly, you have to spend resources on that. Both India and China had a dependency ratio of 170. So like 1.7 old people or children for every one working age person in the 1970s. So there were more dependents than working age people. Over the next 40 years, China went dramatically from 170 to 70. What was the biggest reason for that? That's right, one-child policy. So China actually had a one-child policy starting in the late 70s. So their number of children dramatically reduced. In fact, right now, every year China has around half the number of births as India, or actually lower. Overall population is the same, 1.4 billion, 1.4 billion. But every year in China, say roughly 10 million children are born, in India around 20 million are born. I'm giving you an approximate number. So in China, that dependency ratio fell very fast. In India, it is also likely to hit 70, but around 2040. So the same dependency ratio that China hit in 2015, India hits 25 years later. This is one of the biggest reasons why China saw much faster growth. If you did not have enough children or older people to take care of as a percentage of the population, people could just work more. It's not like Indians are not hardworking. Indians could be more individualistic, they could be more creative, they could be less team players, but in terms of hard works, Indian are as hardworking as anybody in any emerging economy. It is a very upper middle class notion that India is not disciplined or it's very lazy. That's not true. If you see the lower middle class people, they don't have the option but to work hard. Indians are very, very hardworking. So the point remains that China's demographic dividend has already happened. The Chinese demographic dividend is over. So now their dependency ratio has started to rise. This time not because of more children, but because of more old people. In India, it will not happen for another 20 years at least. So when we say we are 10, 15 years behind China or 20 years behind China, in a way it makes sense. Our demographic window is also 20 years longer. This is not to excuse all the policy errors we have done across governments and parties, and which we are now correcting. We could have done much better. There's nothing is predestined. But the fact remains that we will have a much bigger, younger population when not just China, but Europe, even America, if you take out immigrants, and almost all parts of the world except Middle East and Africa will have lower and lower working age people. The largest country by far to add working age people will be Indian. And basically it will be all of you. People who will now enter the 25 to 65 category in the next 2-3 years. So what that means is, in India's case, there's a massive demographic boom to happen. Now people often say, wo sab to theek hai, but what will in India? I'm not commenting on education quality. Education quality still requires a lot to be improved. But earlier there was not 100% literacy. Today, below the age of 25, there's around 95% literacy, if not more. And by the way, it's equal for boys and girls. In fact, there is slightly higher enrollment of girls or young women at every age group, from primary to secondary to higher secondary to tertiary education. So one of the biggest problems of India of not having mass youth literacy or women not being allowed to study, I'm not saying that is completely gone, but it is largely a relic of the past. Not only that, most of these young people are digital natives. So you are all used to using phones. On top of that, we have the jam trinity, right? All of us have Aadhaar. Today morning I took a flight. I did not print anything. I just took Digi Yatra. It saw my face. I did not say hi, hello to any police officer. I directly went in. It is so convenient. And we saw that during vaccines also, COVID vaccines. Our friends in America got paper certificates. We got it on our phone. And that allows, by the way, for welfare and money distribution to poor people in a completely corruption-free manner. After college, my first job was to work in the villages of Rajasthan for MIT. I was working as a research assistant in villages of of cashback. So that has changed. So what scale leads to is innovation. Many of my friends, when I was studying in the US from richer economies, let's say Latin America, which is at $10,000 per capita income, Eastern Europe, Romania, Bulgaria, Poland, etc., they all stayed in the US. But around half of the Indians came back. Now, again, think, it's on a per person poorer country, but more people are coming back. Why is that? That is because it is a much larger market. You can actually do a startup for food delivery, for finance, for anything in technology and raise money today, which in a way was not possible. Even today in smaller but richer countries, it's not possible because the overall market is much smaller. So scale leads to innovation. And the final point, what is very important, which separates India from China also, and this is very important to appreciate because we sometimes do not appreciate it ourselves, is the power of democracy. See, there is a big problems in democracy. If you want to build a road, there will be an environmental activist. Somebody will do a PIL in the local court, the high court. There will be, of course, you'll have to respect the farmers. You'll have to respect anybody whose land is there. It delays the process, but once the process is done, it is done properly. In the case of China now, which from Deng Xiaoping's time to Xi Jinping's time had what was known as collective leadership. So there was an unwritten rule, nobody will have more than 2 terms. Xi Jinping broke that tradition. So now he is effectively a dictator. China was always a dictatorship, but it was a collective dictatorship after Mao Zedong. Now we are back to an individual dictator, which is one of the reasons why the Chinese stock market is not getting multiples. Foreign investment is not coming to China because people are very afraid what happens after Xi Jinping. Not that they necessarily love Xi Jinping, but they don't even know what happens next, because at least when China was not a democracy, there was some system which had been put in place. That this guy will be dictator for 10 years, then his number 2 will be dictator for 10 years, then his number 2 will be dictator for 10 years. So long as there is stability, there is peace, there is predictability, you can make long-term investments. So I'm not even going to the political merits and the moral merits of democracy right now. I'm talking purely from a utilitarian point of view. That is very much there in India. In fact, this recent election, whatever our personal views, I never make any secret of the fact that I'm a big supporter of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. But whatever my personal view might have been, one thing is very clear in this election, that Indian votes are fairly counted. Everybody in the opposition who is saying that votes are not counted today is sitting in the Lok Sabha because of those votes being counted. In fact, there are separatists who are in jail in the states of Punjab and Jammu Kashmir who have been elected. If the Indian state really wanted to rig the elections, at least they would rig the elections for those separatists and terrorists. But they have done completely impeccable free counting. What that means is the Indian democracy is extremely stable and institutionalized. Which is why I always say the real turning point for India after 1947 was not 1991 when economic reforms happened. The real turning transfer of power in India. Why did we lose 1761? What happened in 1761? 1761. The third battle of Panipat. Now imagine, I'm just trying to understand, hardly a few thousand Britishers ruled over India, with the help of Indians only. Hardly a few thousand people from Central Asia or what is today Afghanistan could invade and defeat Indian princes. Of course, they were also sometimes defeated, which is why there was a balance of power. But why was that possible? Because there was no Indian state. What Indians lacked for almost 1,000 years was their own state. And this is not just about politics and war, it is also about economic development. If you don't have your state, when will you invest in your highways? Now the British did invest in irrigation and railroads, but that was for their own exploitation purposes. And they heavily taxed Indians to pay for those irrigation and railways. There were a few Turkic rulers also who did some infrastructure, like Sher Shah Suri built the Grand Trunk Road. But the vast majority of Turkic and British rulers did harm to India because for understandable reasons they did not see Indians as them. They wanted to exploit them for their own loot purposes. So what America and England started building in the 1700s and 1800s, they used to call it internal improvements, railroads, turnpikes. India has only started building the Golden Quadrilateral 25 years ago. The second expressway after the Mumbai-Pune Expressway, which is only 200 kilometers long, has only been started to build around 5-6 years ago. So we also have to keep a 1,000-year perspective on this, at least a 100-year perspective. That ultimately human beings are same everywhere. I will encourage all of you when you go home to just take out Google Maps and see the time taken from traveling from Mumbai to Delhi. Now the expressway will start, right now it has not fully started. And see it's same for Beijing to Shanghai. Similar distance, around 1,500 kilometers. Do something similar on Google Maps in Europe and in America. In India, for all journeys, mostly takes 2x the time. And this is after improving the roads. Earlier it was 3x the time. So obviously Indian exports are slightly less. For cheap items like shoes and textiles, 2-3% is the difference between an export happening or not happening. Again, the people of Gujarat will appreciate this better than almost most states in India. So these things have now started happening in India because Indian democracy has matured, Indian voters have matured, and I'm not talking about any 1 or 2 elections, they are now supporting people who are making long-term investments in the Indian economy. It's never 1951-52 was the first election. And that is because while there are divisions, those divisions are reducing. In this new India, people are becoming more coherent. More people who are from north are being born in Calcutta and they're living in Mumbai, and they're marrying somebody from different state or different caste. And that sense of coherence of the civilization is increasing, which in turn reflects in the politics and in turn reflects in the economics. Now, that is a long-term view why India is likely to grow. I'll give you a very short example of that because again, I want to have more time for questions. Three, right? 248. Now, if the Indian economy grows roughly at 8% and the American economy roughly grows at 2%, what is the difference? 6%? Does anybody knows the rule of 72? Like, how do you double something? So basically, you take whatever the percentage rate of growth is divided by 72. So by the rule of 72, if something is growing faster by 6%, it doubles relatively in how many years? So India is growing faster than America by 6%. By the rule of 72, that 8-time difference will become 4 times difference in how many years? That's right, 12 years. Because the rule of 72 says 72 divided by 6%, 12 years. So what I'm trying to say is with 3 doublings of 12 years each, which is what, 36 years. 36 years is within, if God gives us a long, healthy life and no accidents, etc., for many of us, it's within a lifetime. Within 36 years, I'm just trying to show you the math, not just overtaking America on an overall basis, because our population is 4 times larger. I am talking about convergence of per capita income. If India converges with America on a per capita income, then the overall economy in India will be 4 times larger because there are 4 times more people. Now, it might happen at 5% instead of 36 years, it might take 40 years. But the point to believe is on current trajectories. This is already, America is slightly slowing from 3, 2.5%, 2%, and we are increasing every decade rate of growth from 6 to 7 to 8%. So on current trajectory, not based on completely fantastic numbers, per capita convergence can happen in the next 35 to 40 years. Imagine if India had America's per capita income today, the Indian economy would be as large as the entire world's economy. Because once again, we are 30, 35 times poorer per person on a dollar basis and 4 times more people, so we are overall 8 times smaller. But if we are 4 times larger, just imagine. So that is the long-term view. Now, why is it relevant for short-term? Because if you are graduating this year and you say, well, Harsh, that's very interesting, but I don't know whether it's going to change my life in the next 2-3 years, then this is very important to understand why today is very important to be bullish on India. There is something in economics, and I'm treating you like adults. I'm giving you some concepts which are slightly difficult, but not necessarily technical, because I respect your intelligence. I don't want to dumb it down for you. I want you to think about it and ask me questions. If today, the dollar has a cycle. For around 10 years it weakens, and 10 years it strengthens. And it has been happening since 1970. So ever since the dollar went off the gold standard, that was also Richard Nixon. So that was called the Bretton Woods, when the dollar was fixed to the price of gold. But one point they said, we are spending too much money on Vietnam War, we are doing this, that. There will be nothing backing the US dollar. You have to trust the US government. And which is what people had no option, so they ended up buying dollars instead of gold. So the US dollar has a 10-year cycle downturn, 10-year cycle upturn. The last down cycle for the US dollar was 2002 to 2011. And that is exactly when all emerging markets, including India, did very well, even if there were no reforms at that time. 2011 to 2022 was the up dollar cycle. And actually, it has already turned since 2023, but we're in early days. So whenever the turn happens, a lot of money goes to emerging markets in terms of stock market investments, bonds, foreign direct investment. A lot of money comes in that geo-economic sense. Now, what is the Nifty today? What is the has been basically falling for a decade. And for a decade, Indian markets are basically hitting new highs every year. Imagine that. It is like you are running a race with one leg and one hand tied. If you are running a race with one headwind and one tailwind, because what I'm trying to tell you is that the economic growth, whatever we have seen right now, I've given you the long-term perspective. I'm now giving you a short-term perspective, 5 to 10-year perspective, which is relevant to your immediate career. That point has already started. So there is always risk on the downside. There is political risk, there is a geopolitical risk. If there is a war between China and Taiwan, a lot of things could change very rapidly. Although the wars between Russia, Ukraine, and Israel, Palestine is for the moment contained. But assuming things are as they are, in the next 5 to 10 years, the chance of India growing much faster than people expect, the Indian markets doing well, Indian startups doing well, Indian companies doing well, is actually higher than a lot of people expect. Because money actually flows to emerging markets like India when the dollar starts its weakening cycle. And this is not just for India, it's true for all emerging markets, and this is not just true for the last 1 or 2 cycles, it has happened 5 to 6 times already, starting in 1970. So even in the next 5 to 10 years, from an entrepreneurship point of view, from a market point of view, from an Indian influence point of view, what that is likely to lead is, we always talk about $10 trillion GDP, $5 trillion GDP. See, GDP is different in rupee terms and dollar terms. In dollar terms, it depends what the exchange rate is. Last time that we had a weak dollar phase from 2002 to 2011, actually the rupee was very stable despite having very high inflation. The rupee was stable despite very heavy high inflation. This time, because Indian inflation is very low, the rupee will actually appreciate in nominal terms. So it could go from 80s back to 70s, even 60s by the end of the decade. So whatever we are seeing in terms of rupee GDP, in dollar GDP, it will be much higher. This is one of the reasons to understand for the next 5-7 years, if you are starting a startup, if you're doing a company, the chances of you raising money, or if you join a startup as a co-founder, if you do invest in innovation and democracy, which are long-term reasons to be bullish on India. There is a short-term component and a long-term component. And I would simply conclude by saying one thing. One of the things we often discuss in geoeconomics is on India-China, right? Importing from India-China. A very important thing in the coming years will be the US big tech. See, because we are more against China and slightly towards the US, although again, we are not formal treaty allies, we have led the Twitters and Facebooks and WhatsApps and Googles of the world basically have the Indian market to themselves. Now, Google and Microsoft, just 3 companies together have twice the market cap of all of India. They're at 10 trillion, the Indian market cap is at 5 trillion, just 3 companies. And American companies cannot be global if they don't have Indian access, because China has already thrown them out. See, if China has already thrown you out and India has the potential to negotiate on that, then if you're only in America and Europe, you're a Western company. You're not a global company anymore. And the reason why this is very important is in the coming years, it's called augmented reality, right? You wear something, I can see all of you, but on the glass I can see additional stuff also. So the entire visual line of sight for me becomes like a large computer screen, while I'm also seeing you. Now technologies like this, and especially after the experience of COVID, which led to hybrid work, because people in New York were like, if we are going to send people back to Florida to work virtually and digitally, we can send them to Bangalore people sitting in India. So what China did to manufacturing exports, India is also rising in manufacturing. In fact, some data might show it is even better than people expect. But India is using manufacturing more to substitute imports, not necessarily to export. We were importing a lot of cell phones, we are now manufacturing. Of course, if we manufacture a lot, we'll export some also. But the primary aim in manufacturing is import substitution, not to export. But in services, where the exports are rising very rapidly through tech companies, through global capability centers, GCCs. So you can get a job for Microsoft in Bangalore. It's not for Infosys, it's for Microsoft. It's their research and development center in Bangalore or Hyderabad. Or for a bank in America with their campus in Pune or Ahmedabad or anywhere else. So what will happen is, as Indian service exports rise, America political pressure will increase on India to reduce those service exports, because it will start taking away American jobs. What I'm trying to say is, at that point, India has to bring out the negotiating leverage that all the Googles and WhatsApps and Facebooks and Microsofts of the world have been allowed full free access in India. If today some of these companies get banned, the way TikTok was banned, have any of you heard of Zoho? So Zoho's founder, Sridhar Vembu, is a brilliant global level entrepreneur. So these negotiations, which earlier we would just act like a good boy and not bring it up, will become extremely important as India, which was the 10th largest economy 10 years ago, today is the 5th largest economy, is likely to become the 3rd largest economy within 2 years. We are likely to overtake Japan and Germany. They're $4 trillion something, we are 3.9, 3.8 in this calendar year. Very, very close. So as we become more and more influential, we become the number 3, US remains number 1 and China is closely going towards number 1. India and America will have very difficult conversations while remaining on the friendly side. Or even after that, a relatively small population. Germany and UK had many problems in the late 19th century and early 20th century. In fact, the 2 world wars were effectively between Germany and UK. US entered at the last moment. The real victor of the German-British confrontation was America. Our aim should be that the real victor of the American-Chinese competition should be India. And we can do this. We can do this while saying this openly. In any case, in a democracy, you cannot hide people from sharing their ambitions. We are not like the Chinese. So I would simply conclude by saying that in the next 25 years, it is very much possible that India will be the world's largest economy. In the next 40 years, it is possible, if we continue working hard, we could equal the current developed economies in per capita terms. The problem is, if you say that, a lot of people snigger, they don't believe it. And the first thing to do this is to believe it. Because believing creates that virtuous cycle of self-fulfilling cycle. So if there is one thing which will decide whether India actually achieves this or not, is people of your age cohort. So it is very much in our hands. It is not in the realm of fantastic impossibility. It is very much possible statistically, economically. With that, I'll conclude my talk, and I really want to take many, many questions so that we have more time to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for enlightening us and imparting such valuable knowledge. Now the house is open for questions, and to moderate the question answer session, I would request Dr. Tejal Jani to join with sir on stage.
Sir, it has been like shattering a myth. In the car also we were discussing there's lots of migration taking place because people feel that the future is very bleak over here, whereas you have shattered that myth. In that case, sir, I would just have one statement. Can we say this is the reincarnation of Bharat?
No, absolutely. This is
See, the reason I mentioned this is possible is because the scale of India. And what drives the scale of India? You know, why are people as diverse as people from Jammu and Tamil Nadu together and people from Assam and Gujarat together?
Yes.
It is because of their shared civilizational affinity,
Okay.
which can be best described in the word Bharat.
Okay.
India is a new, young nation state, but it is an ancient civilization called Bharat.
Yes.
So the reason, for example, Pakistan's biggest province is Punjab,
Yes.
but that Punjab and our Punjab are in separate countries.
Yes.
Bangladesh and West Bengal are in separate countries.
Yes.
West Bengal actually is in the eastern part of India.
Yes.
It's called West Bengal because there was an East Bengal. So the reason why this civilization, which is now a nation state, is together is because of its identity as Bharat. So the constitution is very important, democracy is very important, but the underlying soil is the civilization.
Okay.
So that is what allows, that along with the democracy, that along with the republic allows our scale and stability, which is what will allow this great growth in the coming years.
So in that sense, can we say we do not fit into the traditional definition of nation? One race, one people, one
Definitely,
language?
because in Europe, nations were, as ma'am you rightly mentioned, one race, one people, one language.
Yes.
In the context of India, that is closer to the states of India.
Yes.
Like Germany might correspond to Maharashtra, right? Italy might correspond to West Bengal. So we are genuinely multicultural in a small m, small c sense. And that pluralism is because of the word which we can best define as dharma. Dharma is all about unity in diversity. The unity part is also important, diversity part is also important.
Okay.
So long as the diversity is not eating other diversities, an underlying unity is there. That underlying unity is our civilization. That is what is ancient. This constitutional democracy is the latest, youngest manifestation of it. But it is a very powerful manifestation because it has given us a state which we lacked for at least 1,000 years.
Okay.
So that is also important. This is also important. They complement each other. For example, in Egypt or many countries from the Middle East, democracies would often lead to extreme leaders
Yes.
or violent leaders,
Yes.
which is why progressive decisions there are made by authoritarian leaders. So Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Zayed in UAE,
Yes.
they are very progressive leaders. For example, Saudi Arabia has now allowed women to drive.
Yes.
There are music concerts in Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
It is every year it is making things more and more progressive.
Yeah.
But if you had allowed people to vote there, maybe entities like Muslim Brotherhood would have come to power.
Yes.
So democracy is important, but the underlying soil of democracy is also important. That soil was always very suitable for democracy in India. We had ancient democratic republics in India, the Gantantras, but have a unified continental scale democratic state is what is new, and what is something which is the biggest technology or instrument we have in our rise.
So in that sense, sir, can we say that our idea of Sanatan Dharma, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, is contrary to what the Western concept of equality, liberty and fraternity is?
I would not say that they are contrarian, I would say they are complementary to each other.
Okay.
So, see, what is fraternity? It's a very important question for all of us. You know, in Western political philosophy, they only talk about the debate between equality and liberty.
Yes.
So, what was this Cold War? Cold War was America was freedom, democracy, capitalism. Soviet Union was equality, anti-imperialism, even though they themselves were an empire. But that was the slogan.
Yes.
And within European countries also, democracy was between the Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats in Germany, Italy, etc.
Yes.
But all of them either forgot or assumed one thing, that there is a coherent thing called Germany,
Yes.
which was built very painfully and violently by assimilation and by expulsions, both of Germans towards Germany and non-Germans outside of Germany.
Outside the German.
So, any debate of equality or liberty can only happen on an underlying basis of fraternity. So, dharma is about that theological pluralism, but we also need social pluralism.
Yes.
We don't need hierarchies.
Yes.
Or at least birth-based hierarchies.
Yes.
So that combination of dharma in that sense is very intrinsically capable of being modern, because modernity is all about embracing change.
Yes, definitely.
So in that sense, this underlying soil, civilizational soil,
Yes.
gives us a fraternity on top of which these democratic debates of equality and liberty happen. Because if you're not considering yourself as one people, then it will happen what happened in Pakistan, got divided into two countries in 1971.
Yes, yes.
In India, we have secessionist movements in whatever parts where dharma is weak. It is an unfortunate reality. We should not shy away from accepting it.
Exactly.
So, wherever dharma is there, if you then combine it with democracy, that is what makes this a very large, diverse, still united, potent state, which is new to our civilization.
Yes.
The united state part, not the dharma part.
Yes.
This addition is what makes it very special.
Okay.
And that has direct economic implications, direct geopolitical implications.
Yes.
It is just that 70 years, 75 years is nothing in a civilization that is 5,000 years old.
Exactly.
See, again, we have to keep a sense of time and perspective. All these changes in Europe or China or Russia happened through violent revolutions. Somebody would come and overthrow the bourgeoisie.
Yes.
Somebody would overthrow the proletariat.
Yeah.
There would be mass killings. China had massive riots in the 19th century.
Yes.
Europe, of course, saw the two world wars.
Yes.
Russia, obviously, we know what happened there. In India, all these, what V.S. Naipaul called a million mutinies, is happening within a relatively peaceful democratic system. Naxal violence is going down for 30 years. Riots are going down for 30 years.
Yes.
J&K, Northeast violence is going down.
Yes.
There are spikes, but the
Yes.
trend is down.
Down, yeah.
The Indian democratic state is winning. And that has to be emphasized, because in news you'll only see bad news. I am not saying everything is fine. For example, what happened yesterday in Delhi and Jabalpur was terrible. Accountability has to be put. But we are at $2,500 per capita income and somebody is at $85,000 because things are not perfect. The point is the trajectory, the direction. That is more important. Where we are, we know we are already at a bad situation in a relative sense. The point is, what is the speed and direction? That is important.
Do we have questions from the audience? Yes, please.
Just also please quickly say your name.
Yes, good afternoon, sir. Myself, Tvita Shah. So the question I have for you is, as you mentioned earlier, India is on its way to a massive growth, economy-wise. So my question is, can the startup industry of India surpass the US startup industry in the upcoming years?
See, startup sector or any sector, be it automotive sector, be it chemicals, be it any particular sector, is ultimately a function of the overall economic size. So India, by some estimates, already has either the third or fourth largest startup ecosystem in the world. Generally, the US is the largest. China is number 2. In some estimates, either the UK system, which is in a way also for the broader European continent, is number 3. In some studies, India is seen as a number 3, depending on number of startups or funding raised, etc. So you're already in the top 3 or 4, while we are in the top 5 or 6 economies. I'm saying 6 if you count Europe as one economy. So as India becomes a very large economy, the startups will automatically become one of the, if not the largest sectors of the world. It is basically a function, Smita, of the economic size of the country. So yes, it basically depends on the overall, and in turn, startups would lead to the economy growing. So it's not just a variable that is being affected. It is something that is in turn leading that growth.
Yes, somebody else? Yeah, please.
All right. Good afternoon, sir. My name is Heer Joshi. And first of all, I'd like to say that the entire session was very, very insightful. And for someone who has a keen interest in global dynamics, the session was very discerning.
Hello.
So my question to you, sir, is that in your book, A New Idea of India, Sir Rajiv and you talk about taking pride in our rich history while embracing the modernity. So my question to you is that in the wake of moving towards modernity, do you feel that the youth is losing the essence of the history of our nation and synonymously relating modernization to westernization?
So I think what you are saying here is it's a very real risk, but I'm not sure it's actually happening. But nonetheless, we cannot be complacent about it. So the question is, while we are very proud about our roots and traditions in a broader sense, we are embracing modernity. What does it mean to embrace modernity? See, modernity is all about being comfortable with socio-economic change. I'll give you an example on economics, and then on social side it's really easier to understand. When the Manchester textile revolution happened, and I did not get time to talk about how they destroyed the Indian textile industry through tariffs, etc. But once it happened there, actually people who were then sewing there with hands, etc., were very, very sad and disappointed and afraid about these big machines. And some of them were known as the Luddites. The Luddites actually destroyed many textile machines in Manchester in the late 18th and early 19th century. Eventually, the British English Parliament had to make it a capital offense. So at one point, they contained the violence, but then what did they do? The 1832 Reform Act. They increased the franchise. They allowed more people to vote. They introduced something known as poor laws, which is basically the incipient version of a welfare state. So for capitalism to happen, for the most efficient person to win, you will have to accept somebody else to lose. But somebody else to lose is overall accepted by society only if there is a safety net. Only if everybody has representation. That representation, that safety net, that basic welfare, which we are also doing and all countries are doing, allows actually that rate of change of innovation to happen faster. Because the person who's losing is not focused on just the damage that he or she will face. Although it's never easy to change jobs or to reskill, and you may never get the same package or salary or profits you are getting in another sector. But the fact that there is some help from society and the state allows you as a country to innovate. So the modernity is basically being okay with relative fall of status for an absolute increase in everybody's well-being. Same thing in society. If we have a particular orthodox view that only somebody born can do something, only somebody born can be a soldier, only somebody born can be a businessman, only somebody born can be a scholar, then we have a society where the best talent is not going to the best possible matching. But if you allow that mobility, modernity is mobility, then that allows that, okay, because the best talent has gone to a particular field, all of us are benefiting through this soft redistribution, through everybody being better off. So traditions are very, very important. There is a big problem with modern day social media, with woke politics, but I also feel that the youth will find their own way. They might express their pride in their traditions and their ancient civilization in a different way. And again, we cannot be complacent. But we should not confuse form for substance. Maybe the form will be different. Maybe they will express their pride in their dharmic roots in a different sense. But what is important is, and the reason is, in the US and Europe, for example, the percentage of people following Christianity as per their own census, the surveys, has gone from 95% to around 55%, depending from country, 50 to 60%. 30 to 40% people say they are atheist, agnostic, spiritual, but not religious. But in Hindu dharma, there is so much flexibility that a Nastik is also Hindu and Astik is also Hindu. So they do not feel the need to leave the fold. And when you are troubled, when there is something wrong in the family, you want to pray to some deity, you want to follow some tradition, it is flexible enough to bring you back in. Because it's not black and white. So which is why I'm very, very optimistic on the civilizational aspect also. Having said that, we have to make efforts, nothing is guaranteed. So it's a very good question, thank you for asking that, and I'm glad you read the book also.
Thank you.
Yes.
Namaste, sir. Myself Anshul Barot. सर सबसे पहले सर आई फील सो प्राउड कि हमारे पास आपके जैसे स्कॉलर्स हैं जो हमारे भारत को एक जीता जागता राष्ट्र पुरुष बनाने में लगे हैं. सर मेरा एक छोटा सा आपसे एक क्वेश्चन है कि हाउ विल इंडियाज विड्रॉवल फ्रॉम RCEP विच इज़ रीजनल कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव इकोनॉमिक पार्टनरशिप इम्पैक्ट इट्स डोमेस्टिक इकोनॉमी. थैंक यू.
तो ये बहुत अच्छा प्रश्न है. इन्होंने पूछा है कि देयर वाज अ ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट in which China was a part in Asia called RCEP. Initially, when Piyush Goyal ji was Commerce Minister, we were thinking of entering it. At the last moment, we decided not to enter. See, this is exactly based on what we had just discussed. What is the situation right now is because China is not a democracy. They do not have to do basic welfare to the extent India at a lower per capita income is doing. They don't have to respect land rights, property rights to the extent we have to respect, and we rightly should respect. China is able to funnel much more subsidies, bank loans into their industrial, manufacturing and export sectors. So if without protections and without being ready and without being large enough on our side, we today join RCEP, which is basically dominated by China, it can lead to a massive influx of cheap Chinese goods which destroys our industry. In the short term, it might be better for the customers. But in the long term, those customers only will be worse off because the overall economy will be worse off. So what India is doing instead, we are not going against free trade per se. We basically want to somehow carve out an exemption for the Chinese Communist Party. So India, for example, did a quasi-FTA, free trade agreement with Australia. We did one with UAE. We are in negotiations with European Union. We're happy to have the negotiations with the United States. We will do that with UK right now, it's going on. I mean, Rishi Sunak might lose the coming elections there, but Narendra Modi and Rishi Sunak worked very hard on trying to get a UK FTA, India-UK FTA done. So the idea is let us trade with partners in the, like Japan, Korea, ASEAN also to some extent, although some Chinese goods come through ASEAN, Australia, European Union, UK, US. For the moment, for the next 3-4 years, as we grow stronger, let us try to just keep trade with China to minimum. Anyway, it will happen because we are dependent on them for many intermediates. The pharma sector in Gujarat depends on APIs from China. Chemical sector here depends on intermediates from China. So even if we want, we can't fully disassociate from them, but let us not deepen the dependence. Although the trade surplus is on their side. So if we withdraw, they lose a surplus. But unfortunately, as a percentage of the economy, the trade with them for us is slightly larger than their trade with us. So the surplus is with them, but the dependence is more on us. So therefore, in terms of a 5 to 10 year tactical retreat, not going to RCEP was a very strong, smart move. Even within the government, people had different views. Dr. Panagaria, who I know and respect enormously, thought we should enter RCEP because he thought the free trade would help overall. But this was not an economic question only, it was also a geopolitical question. So for that reason, we decided not to go. In my view, it was the right step for now. Maybe in 4 or 5 years, our view will be different. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Just in addition to that, is Global South likely to change the scenario in years to come?
So the Global South, to ma'am's question, is basically the emerging economies, developing countries, Africa, Asia except Japan, although some people would include China or not include China, Latin America, parts of Southeast Asia. I think India is trying to claim leadership of Global South.
Yes.
Simultaneously, China is also trying to claim leadership of the Global South. What has happened is by coming together, for India, China as well as other developing economies, they have more of a voice. So if America or Europe does something unilaterally on a particular industry, just meeting each other regularly allows us to push back. That happened during the vaccines in the COVID phase.
Yes, yes.
So it is likely to happen. India's view is very simple. We will talk with everybody. We will try to be friends with everybody. And our agreement or disagreement with everybody will be on issue-to-issue basis.
Yes.
We want to be friends with everybody, but we are not part of an alliance with anybody where somebody makes a phone call and say, you have to send troops there.
Yes.
We are not willing to do that.
Yes.
Because we are large enough to be our own pole. And if we are not large enough to be our own pole today, we will be in 3-4 years.
Definitely.
And we have enough self-respect not to debase ourselves before that by being part of somebody's pole.
Yes.
When we did not bend in the 90s, when I told you we were at 1% of global GDP.
Yes, yes, definitely.
When there were insurgencies in Punjab and Kashmir. when our chief patron in the Soviet Union had collapsed. If we did not bend then, why will we bend now?
Yes. Yes, somebody from that corner was raising the hand. Yeah, please. Yeah. Yeah.
Hello. Very good afternoon, sir. My name is Vishwajit Singh. And sir, the question regarding the per capita convergence which you talked about, as you said that there is a very high probability that India would become a very high proficient nation in the further future. But at the very same time, sir, the brain drain which ma'am talked about is very realistic and very reasonable right now. Because as the India is growing with a very high pace and still as inflation is going around the world and still India is touching the faces of the nations, still we are in a very better position than other nations. But at the very same time, while our per capita income is around 1995 and China's is around 6995, sir,
I got your question. Let me answer the point about brain drain.
Yes.
A very good question, Vishwajit. I'll answer that. There is some truth in what you are saying and what ma'am said. However, we have to put in perspective. For example, I was reading an article that IIT Bombay Computer Science, which is generally where the top rankers go after giving IIT JEE. Over the last 20 years, something like 90% 20 years ago of those batch would go abroad, either to work in the US or do a PhD in the US. That number has gone down to something like 30-20%. So the ultra cream talent is already deciding to stay in India because investors are going after them saying, "Tum startup kar lo, I'm ready to give you money." So there are layers and layers. It is true that a larger section is today going to study abroad, and I actually support that because you see, before becoming a Vishwa Guru, we have to become a Vishwa Shishya. Right? As the foreign minister calls it Vishwa Mitra, which is also true. Because Vishwa Guru directly is a very arrogant statement to make. It is a right ambition to have, but if we do not understand other people, then we are basically insular. So I'm all in favor of traveling, studying, working abroad. And eventually, if the Indian diaspora there can also contribute to us through remittances and investments. In fact, I have a contrarian view on a particular position that if we have good enough security databases on our personal end, on India's end, which is not very difficult to implement, we should actually allow dual citizenship, not just OCI. We should allow people who are friendly to us in friendly countries, by and large. Maybe Canada can be an exception right now. Then we can allow them to be dual citizens. They are more likely to invest hard dollars in India. So even there's not just brain drain, it's brain circulation. So first of all, less people are going abroad at the very, very top end of the talent spectrum. Secondly, many who are going abroad are also helping India and we can take more help from them. And thirdly, it's a global civilization. But remember, the gross enrollment ratio for higher education in India is close to touching 30%. So if 1 million people go, that's increasingly a smaller and smaller percentage of college educated population in India. So there is a drain, but as a percentage and as an impact in a negative sense, it is not as large as some people think. And in fact, there are positive impacts also. Please finish.
Sir, so what I was saying is that there is this very famous economist, Mr. Okun's, and he has given a theory of, referred to as Okun's law. And
I could not hear you. Theory of?
Okun's law.
Okun's law?
Yes, sir. And in that particular theory, he suggests that the nation which is growing with a pace of 4% in the GDP growth rate must have a growth in the employment rate as well. That should be minimum of 1%. So, sir, in India, it's completely opposite. So,
see,
what are your suggestions?
I understood a point on Indian employment. There we don't have very good data. So there is something called national sample surveys, government PLFS data, periodic labor force survey data, that actually shows Indian unemployment falling for the last 3-4 years rapidly, both across ages, across men and women, across educated, uneducated, and across rural, urban. But there are private organizations like CMIE, which show that unemployment data is higher than the official data. So now I'm not saying that anybody has necessarily a bad motive, but in a relatively semi-formal economy like India, counting jobs is not easy. See, jobs is not a problem in India. You can go outside right now, get a 20,000 rupees job. The point is getting a good job, which is in congruence with your education, with your broader ambitions, your long-term trajectory. That is the problem in India. There's also a problem, by the way, in China also, where youth unemployment is very high. So it is a growing pain where you as a student, as a young professional, are taking a long-term view. There are some problems, for example, I think we have too much focus on government jobs. Although it's less of a problem in Gujarat, more in UP and Bihar. Understandably, because they're relatively less developed states as of now. But because they give that lifelong guarantee of pension, retirement, and then unfortunately in our society it's easier for you to get married if you get a government job. And people also take Dahej, which should be illegal and people should never take. So unfortunately for those reasons there's a certain attraction. People don't take normal private sector jobs, they keep on sitting repeatedly for government exams. So jobs in India is not a problem. Good, high quality, well-paying jobs is a problem. And for that we need reforms, we need infrastructure, we need legal reforms, we need a lower cost of capital, lower rates of borrowing money. These things will matter. Jobs are a natural consequence. The reason there is an unemployment rate is people are waiting for something better. They're not ready to accept at that level. It's more frictional unemployment, to use an economic term. It's not necessarily structural unemployment in that sense. So it's a real concern. I'm not dismissing the concern. I'm saying the problem is with good quality jobs, not jobs as such. I just want to add one point. Indian female labor force participation is quite low, but it follows a U curve. So that U curve, actually a female economist got a Nobel Prize 2 years on that. In very poor and undereducated rural societies, almost all women work outside of the home, mostly in the field of farm. Right? They contribute to the family. In a socially conservative society, as you grow slightly richer, then there is a pride of quote unquote, our women are not working, they don't have to work. So then women working is a trough in the middle layer. Then once again in very educated, urban, upper middle class segments, almost all women are working. So that U curve, if you plot out on Indian data, we have probably crossed the bottom right now. And I want to add another caveat there that those women who are not quote unquote working outside the home are still working very hard in the home. See, China had a one-child policy. We still have a TFR of around 2. I have a daughter, so I know it takes a lot of effort and energy to bring up children. That is also an investment in the future, even if it is not counted in GDP today. Right? The demographic dividend we are talking about is because our mothers and grandmothers worked very hard, not just our fathers and grandfathers. They all worked in a complementary way. So even the working definition or employment definition has to be seen in a holistic sense.
Yes, somebody had raised. Yeah, please.
Hello, sir. My name is Diya Baviskar.
What's your name?
Diya. So my question to you is, in the face of growing great power competition, how is India leveraging its position with multilateral frameworks like Quad and IPEF to advance its geopolitical and geo-economic interests?
It's a very good question. IPEF is the India-Pacific Economic Framework. This is basically a non-China, India, US, Japan-led Asian framework of economic cooperation. It's not exactly a free trade agreement like RCEP is.
Yes.
There is another free trade agreement which India might join called CPTPP, the Comprehensive Pacific Trade Partnership something, where again, it's all these countries in Asia Pacific except China. So IPEF is a broader diluted version of that. Again, India's view is very clear. We want to enter as many trade agreements as possible, but with minimal new trade agreements directly or indirectly with China. The issue is what happens is, a Chinese company will invest in Vietnam. They will basically bring all their component parts right from their Guangzhou or Hong Kong. They'll go to Vietnam and they just assemble one little nut, bolt, and then it'll be re-exported from Vietnam. That is called transshipment. So technically trade agreements have a minimum amount of value add which must have happened in the last country. The problem is finding and enforcing that is not always easy. So in theory, it should be okay to enter all trade agreements without China, but in practice, a lot of these things have to be understood. If you are basically trading with all countries around China, even if you are not trading with China, you are effectively trading with China. So how do we balance that? Should we look more towards America and Europe first? Because there the idea of transshipment from China to America to back to India is less likely. So those considerations are there, but India is leveraging it very well. As I mentioned, America needs India as much as India needs America. Yeah. We cannot say that for Japan or even Europe. because they are dependent for the security on American nuclear and security umbrella. In a way, India is not. So India is in a position to negotiate, if not as an equal, at least as a peer, which others are almost in a neo-colonial dependence on America. So India is leveraging that for economic growth. We just have to give it some time.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, somebody from that corner, please stand up. Yeah, please stand up.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Krish Akhani. And sir, my question is, what are your thoughts on debt to GDP ratio?
It's a very good question. See, I'll begin with a joke. It's a very serious but nonetheless joke. That if you owe the bank $1 million, $1 million, around 8 crore rupees, it is your problem. If you owe the bank $1 billion, it is the bank's problem. So that is how we have to think about debt. What I mean by that is, this Friday, so today is Saturday, literally yesterday, India entered global bond indices. I don't know if some of you read in the newspaper. We entered the JP Morgan Emerging Market Bond Index. In January, we'll enter Bloomberg also. Only one is left, FTSE Russell, that will come out soon. And after this, we'll enter the full bond indices. Right now, we've entered the emerging bond indices. What I mean by that is only 2% of the Indian debt, and which is all rupee in rupee terms because it's our debt, is owned by foreigners. For Indonesia, it's like 30-40%. For most countries, it's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% for smaller countries. So, very little of our debt, unlike our equities, is held by foreigners. So what will happen is debt is not a problem if we use that debt for constructive investments. Actually, I was very honored to be invited to a meeting of economists with the Prime Minister in January 2023. I'm not allowed to tell what others said, but I can tell you what I said. That I said that debt is not a problem per se. We must enter global bond indices. If we use some additional debt to build infrastructure, that helps long-term growth. If we build investments in our economy, it helps long-term growth. Yes, if we take debt and just spend it all around, then it's not useful. And the final point is, you know, fiscal deficit, how it is measured. Fiscal deficit is primary deficit plus interest paid. I don't want to make it a macroeconomics technical class, but what I mean by that, every year you spend a bit more than you take as a government, plus you pay the interest on the debt which is already there. So what you spend a bit more is known as primary deficit, then you add the interest paid, primary deficit plus interest is equal to fiscal deficit. Deficit financing. So states ko main bhul raha hu, right now we'll come down to around 5% of GDP for fiscal deficit this year. One very important thing is not just to reduce the primary deficit, but to reduce the interest component also. In India right now, the 10-year is yielding 7%. You know what it is in China? 2%. Germany, 2.5%. America, around 4%. So, it is debt denominated in rupees. We are basically paying to our own banks and people who have bought that debt. Without increasing inflation, we can reduce that rate a bit. Now that we have entered global bond indices, it will automatically start to happen. See, again, this is not dollar debt, this is our debt. The problem in a democracy is there are a lot of small savings, postal savings. You can't suddenly cut interest rates very dramatically also. So one of the points which I had mentioned to the Honorable Prime Minister was that if we can perhaps give tax breaks to senior citizens who are investing in these debt risk-free instruments. And that to some extent actually happened in the coming budget last year, in the budget that happened after that in the last year. So it is a very important point where we have to reduce the cost of interest rate, not just for the fiscal deficit, but if you want to take a home loan today, the home loan is benchmarked to the risk-free rate. Instead of 7% or 8% or 9%, you can get it at 6%. Similarly, if somebody wants to take a loan to start a business, so we cannot continuously give money to people who are risk averse and make it more difficult for people, young people generally, who are wanting to take risks. So to control debt, two things. First, what you spend on, make it more investment, less consumption. And secondly, try to reduce the cost of interest rate also, which in my view right now is artificially high in India, on the slightly higher side.
Thank you, sir.
So on the side note, what are your comments about the freebies which are being promised.
See, as I mentioned about the Luddites attacking the machines in early 19th century England, textile this in Manchester, etc. Of course, they had to ban and even hang some of those violent writers. But then they followed it up with advanced voting rights, and we already have a universal adult franchise in India. Everybody gets the right to vote. India is the only large country which is going from poverty to richness by being universal adult franchise on day one. In parts of Switzerland, in some cantons, cantons is the word for states within Switzerland, in some cantons of Switzerland, women got the right to vote as late as 1970s. India, everybody got the right to vote, rich, poor, educated, uneducated, man, women. If you were above a certain age, you had the right to vote.
Yes.
So, freebies in an economy where some people are doing very well, you need to have some kind of safety net. The trick is about balance and about making sure how efficient it is. For example, government schools, very important, but everywhere there are unions. If you can have some competition, then you can have more bang for the rupee spent. So we need welfare, we need freebies, whether you call it freebies, you call it revenue, whatever you want to call it. The point is, in a competitive democracy, if you don't do that, you'll be out of power, you anyways can't do anything else.
Exactly.
So the question is about the balance, making sure it is efficient, making sure corruption is less through these digital cash transfers, Aadhaar, Jan Dhan Yojana, Jam Trinity, making it more efficient, less corrupt, more useful to the people. For example, why did nobody think of having, gas-free cooking stoves before Prime Minister Modi? Women were basically ingesting the chula dhua for years.
For years.
We had reached electricity to every village, but not to every house. Now every village is getting that null, potable water. I'm not saying it's fully done.
Yes.
But that is also a form of not freebie, but empowering people so they have more free time to actually work on their families and their work. Imagine if you, as a woman in a rural area, you have to walk for half a kilometer just to get drinking water. Or to go to the toilet where men cannot see you.
Exactly.
So small things like that also enable people then to take part in the modern capitalist economy. It is only possible if there is a safety net. We will always keep on debating on the extent of the safety net and how efficient it is. But without a safety net, that's another area where I am no longer libertarian. Because see, that is also, without that safety net, you cannot have that mobility and modernity. The question is how much?
Exactly. And not in terms of cash.
See, there cash also it's possible, like conditional cash transfers are there. People, it is generally seen by economists that if you give to the women of the house, it is more likely to be spent better. Again, on average, I'm not saying that all women are more responsible than all men. But on average, it is likely to spend better because men are more likely to waste it on either gambling or alcoholism.
Yes.
On average.
Yeah.
So, if you target there, if you link it to your child getting a vaccine, if you link it to your child being in school, then it's not such a bad way. Because then you're at least getting some work done out of them for the broader benefit of the society. So it is a balance. If you give too much cash, then people can become lazy also.
Yeah.
But it is also a very clean way of giving money while getting some good out. So we have already Kisan Yojana, Prime Minister launched it 3-4 years ago. PM Kisan Yojana.
Kisan Samman Nidhi
So
Yojana.
Kisan Samman Nidhi program. So we can have more such programs, so long as they are moderate, they are targeted, and they are for good purposes.
Yes.
And it will always be a cyclical process of improving it.
Yes.
But for example, a bad way of helping people is to give a complete farm loan waiver.
Yes.
Because then what happens is, the banks who have given the loans, they lose, eventually have to submit them. Might as well just give them directly cash.
Yes.
Might as well give them better 24/7 power at a cheaper rate. So that is a way of giving bad incentives. So we have to help the more unfortunate people of our society, but we have to help in a smarter way.
Yes. Yes, any more question? Yeah, please. Yeah. Please stand up.
Good morning. Myself, Nihal Goswami. I ask to, as you say, sir, there will be fabulous growth in economic. There will also chance in increase in unequal distribution of income.
Yes, absolutely, there is a chance. However, what matters more than inequality is mobility. See, if you go and talk to an Uber driver in Delhi or Mumbai, or anybody who is working in a blue-collar job, it is always surprising and sometimes saddening. A very large part of their wages go to send their schools to English medium private schools. और उसके बाद उनको ट्यूशन दिलाना शाम को. They might earn 30,000-40,000 rupees a month, but on the 2 children, including their school fees and tuition, they might spend 15,000. Imagine if you earn 3 lakh rupees a month and 1.5 lakh rupees you're spending only on your children. And at a much lower amount. That is the amount of belief that Indians today have in education, because they say whatever we could not do, our next generation through education, through such colleges can do. Now, given that situation, if Mukesh Ambani becomes 10% richer today, it does not make me worse off. Please try to understand. But if there are things which I cannot do or my children cannot do, because of too much concentration of economic or political power, then it's a bad problem. So inequality number by itself is not an issue, the mobility is an issue. In fact, on a global basis, inequality is already peaked in 2000. Last 20-25 years it has been falling because of the rise of China and India. If you basically lined up all human beings in one line, 8 billion. But within countries, in all countries, inequality is slightly rising. And it's a real problem. So for that, I think young people should be able to buy homes on mortgage with better terms. Young people who are not in the stock market, they should be doing SIPs instead of single stocks or derivatives where they lose money. They should build long-term assets. And most importantly, education is the ultimate way of mobility. So inequality is there. The rich should be taxed a bit more compared to those who are not rich, but not so much that the productive part of the economy also slows down. So just like on welfare, it is about a balance, and it is not directly about inequality, it is about social economic mobility. Because if the next generation, somebody else is rich, and somebody else has gone down to the middle class, then it's fine. But if only one family is rich throughout, and the person who's poor is always poor for the next 3 generations, then it will not lead to a healthy society. The churn is important, not the percentage distribution in any given year. So that is the difference. So we can quickly take this last question from this gentleman.
Thank you, sir.
Because he had stood up, so.
Hello sir, my name is Rishabh and I want to ask about India's foreign policy. Since our independence, we have been following a policy of non-alignment by not directly participating in any wars and conflicts. So sir, if a situation arises like our late General Bipin Rawat said, we have to be prepared to fight a war of 2.5 front war. So are we prepared to fight a war without any external support or
I think, see, the issue is, I got your point. The question is, India has always had a non-alignment policy. In practice, I would say in the second half of the 60s and 70s and early 80s, we were leading more towards the Soviet Union. Like today, also the word we use, for example, Dr. Jaishankar uses the word multi-alignment and not non-alignment. But strategic autonomy, you can call it. We are perhaps leaning more towards the US, but again, we are not in anybody's camp, as you mentioned. So, to your question, this is a very valid and very good question, I congratulate you on that, is, agar hum kisi ke camp mein nahi hai, and if we have a 2-front war tomorrow, then can we then ask the other person to come fight on our behalf? And the answer to that is, while India needs to spend more on defense, not just for defense purpose itself, but one of the simplest ways to have civilian innovation is spillover from defense. Remember, the internet was effectively invented by the American army through DARPA. Solar energy was invented by the American space project, which was also a kind of a military competition with Soviet Union, because space rockets also become ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles. So the point remains that we have to spend more on defense, but nonetheless, because we have the world's 4th largest defense budget today. In fact, we had the 3rd, but after the Russia-Ukraine war, Russia overtook temporarily. Because we have a 1.4 million army, because we have nuclear weapons, I think we can take on a 2-front war. Nonetheless, for their own interest, other countries will help us out because they will not want to see us defeated, because that will make China stronger. So we don't need a treaty ally for that. We need friendships. And in fact, during the confrontation with China, there are reports that America helped us out with some satellite data. And in turn, we have been helping them out about data about terrorists in Afghanistan and Pakistan, etc. So that quid pro quo remains. But we don't need to formally be in somebody's camp. We don't have to be that afraid. as I again said, if we did not bend in the 1990s, when we kind of hit the nadir, there's no reason to bend now.
I know all of you are very curious to ask questions, but then time is the constraint. And so we'll put an end to our interaction. And before we end, I'll just propose a vote of thanks. Honorable Harsh Sir, invited guests, my colleagues and students, it's a matter of privilege for me to propose the vote of thanks on this special occasion. On behalf of Faculty of Business Administration, GLS University, I extend a heartfelt gratitude to Harsh Sir for gracing us with his enlightening presence today. Sir, your insights and expertise shared during the session have been truly inspiring, and definitely they'll shape our future. Your profound knowledge in geoeconomics and geopolitics has enlightened us all and provided valuable perspectives that we will carry forward in our academic and professional journeys. We are grateful for the time and effort you invested in preparing for today's session. Your passion for Long India was evident and is deeply appreciated by us. We are indebted to Sudhir Sir, Chandni Ma'am and Dharmesh Sir for the free hand that they give us for organizing such events. I would also like to thank my Dean, Dr. Shefali Dani, for organizing this enriching event and ensuring its smooth conduct. I put on record my sincerest thanks to my colleagues for their dedication and support in facilitating such learning opportunities. I extend my thanks to all the students and participants for their active engagement and enthusiasm throughout the session. Your thoughtful questions and interactions made today's event even more meaningful. I thank all those who have contributed directly or indirectly to make this event a huge success. Harsh Sir, thank you once again for your invaluable contribution. Your presence has left an indelible mark on us, and we look forward to applying the knowledge gained today in all our endeavors ahead.